Hello everybody, this is Angel of Chaos, and I'm here to rant about art. So, I had a bit of a realization earlier that a lot of people consider art to be a bad profession. Not, for a couple reasons. One of the main ones is in the sense of pay. A lot of people consider art to be one of those things that does not pay. That you put all this, all effort into it, and then all of a sudden it turns out to be, nothing. But I feel like a lot of people, when they're talking about art, they often have this visualization about what art is. Oftentimes that art is like, to them, just like splattering some paint on a page and saying, oh, yep, that works. But the truth is that there's actually a lot of different kinds of art. A lot of different kinds. In fact, so much so that if all the artists were to suddenly disappear, the world would be fundamentally different. Things that we grow so used to in our day-to-day lives would be completely non-existent. I'll give you an example. In the sense of art, let's say movies. And I'm not talking about just cartoons or anime or just generally just like animated films. I'm talking about anything in terms of the film industry. It could be something as big as like the next Avengers movie. Yes, live action has art. And I'm not just talking about the sense of like, I'm not just talking about like the art of theater, because that is also considered an art. I'm talking about, for example, I'm going to go back to Marvel probably a lot in this conversation. For example, in the scene where Bruce Banner turns into the Hulk, somebody had to sit at a computer and draw all of those details. So, in that sense, graphic design is an art. You can't not have that in that sense. Art is not confined. And I say that literally. Art is not confined. It's not simply sit down at a desk, grab a pencil, and draw something. It's not just that. Now, there are many things that are considered to be art that no one really takes the time to consider. I'll give another example. Let's say that you are over at a friend's house or something, or maybe you yourself have one of these. A kitchen table. Now, we actually have one at my house. I probably have a couple videos with this table in it. But normally you don't really tend to pay tables much mind. But the truth is that without an artist, a lot of these really, really nice tables wouldn't exist. Seriously. A lot of, like, industrial tables, like the kinds that you might get from, like, IKEA or something, they tend to fall apart very easily. And the simple reasoning for that is that there's no effort put into it. There's no care put into it. It's simply, let's just slap this together and hope that it works. That's literally, a lot of them are so poorly made. And then you get to a table that actually has like form to it. Maybe it even has like some kind of ornate design on the legs or on the edge of the table. We had a very, very nice table when I was growing up that had like this really, really nice design around the edge of the actual tabletop. Now here's the thing, is that had to be done by somebody. That's not something that's very easily done in terms of a machine at this point. Because a lot of times, whenever you get a machine to do something, it's industrialized. And when something is industrialized, it turns into what you might consider to be IKEA furniture. which I don't know if you've ever, 1, tried to put together IKEA furniture, or 2, tried to use IKEA furniture. That stuff is not well made in any regard. And in fact, a lot of the time, in fact, I think most of the time, it's not even real wood in the sense of like actual wood. It's basically sawdust that's been pressed into the shape of wood. And ultimately, if you were to like punch that hard enough, your fist would go right through it. No joke. Your fist would go right through it. Okay. Now that's a bit of a, now that might seem like a bit of a stretch in terms of an example. In terms of art, like woodworking and metalworking even. Okay, I'll give another example, one that is actually very near and dear to my heart. Authors. A lot of the best stories had to be written by somebody. You can't just have something come into this world and not have it be created somehow. For example, think of all of the works of art that we consider to be today. All of the wonderful classics. Now imagine if those people never existed or decided that they didn't want to do that because they were discouraged, because like authors don't get a lot of money. Now think about how the world would change in terms of how we view the world. The thing about writing is that while an artist, in terms of like a painter, for example, can draw a beautiful landscape, a sunset, a field of beautiful flowers, maybe even some trees off in the distance, a couple of children running through it, that gives you a beautiful little snapshot into what this world is. It creates a window inside of a frame that you can look through and say, wow, that's cool. But a writer can take that image and put it directly into your mind with words. They can latch onto your brain and say, do you see this? Do you see this world? And because of the way that they word things, because of the way that it comes across in our mind, we can say, yeah, I do see that. Because we do. We experience the world through the eyes of the people who are in this world, or maybe even some omnipresent being. We live their lives in the moment that the book is there, to the point where we close the book, we look around, and it's almost surreal that we're actually not in the book. It becomes surreal. Reality becomes surreal because the fantasy becomes so ingrained in our minds at that point that it's honestly almost unbelievable when we come out of that. Writing is art. Woodworking is art. Metalworking is art. Graphic design is art. Another form of art, singing. All of the amazing bands, all of the amazing songwriters, all of the amazing orchestras. Think about if none of the movies that you watched as a kid had any music to them. Would the atmosphere be the same? No, not in a million years. Think about all the things today that revolve around music, that revolve around this idea of putting a few sounds together, maybe a couple instruments, and then suddenly we hear and we feel. Something about that is art, because the thing about art is that it's not always supposed to be pretty. It's not always supposed to be something that you look at to admire. It's something that you look at, or that you feel, or that you experience, because art wasn't always meant to be pretty. It was meant to make you feel something. It was meant to make you sit back for a moment and go, huh, that's pretty cool. I like that. Or maybe it was supposed to make you feel some kind of deep emotion like, wow, I know what that feels like. I understand that. I empathize with this character in this book, or those lyrics in that song make sense to me, and wow, I really can see how much effort was put into this. The thing is that art exists all around us. We don't always really see it. And yet it's there. It's always there. In fact, and this is coming from a bit of a strange perspective to some, but those of you who know, I'm actually a Christian. And I don't think God would look at somebody and say, wow, I really messed up on this one. No, he doesn't think that. It doesn't matter how broken you are, how much you've been hurt, how much you've been tattered and crumpled and stepped on, because he looks at you and he still says, that's my masterpiece. That's my work of art right there. Because the thing is that no matter how much you've been hurt or broken or stepped on or whatever, no matter how broken or torn you may feel, you're still a masterpiece. You're still art. You're still a beautiful, beautiful painting. You're a beautiful story. I'm not going to compare you to a table, even though they are considerably art. You are amazing. You are art, and God is the artist. To those of you who think that art is just one of those getaway, like in one of those getaway careers, a career that, oh yeah, it might not pay much, but at least you don't have to put a lot of effort into it. Can I just say right away, fuck you? Because there is a lot of effort that goes into it. Think about, for example, a graphic novel. Could you imagine the amount of effort that each one of those pages would take? You probably don't. Because if you're actually saying, oh, must not take a lot of effort, you probably never even picked up a pencil and tried to draw before. Because trust me, it's a lot of effort. A lot of effort. Especially to do it right. And the thing is that there's really no right way to do art. A lot of people believe that there is, rules or whatever. But looking back on so many past artists that we look at their art and say, whoa, that's really cool. A lot of those artists, you do realize that a lot of those artists very rarely fit inside the box. Very rarely. And yet, a lot of people try to do that. Why? You don't need to. I think I've ranted enough on this subject. But art will always hold a very, very special place in my heart. And even if you can't see yourself as a masterpiece, as a wonderful portrait and story, then at least know that I do. I do. I care a lot about all of you. As someone who's been broken and beaten before, I can tell you that it never decreased your value. It never made you less valuable because of the fact that you got a little ripped around the edges or a little faded. I care about you. I always will. Well, art rant over. This is Angel of Chaos. Bye.